the transfer portal, it was definitely a lot easier than it could have been for the Clemson Tigers. But we did get hit with the transfer portal. We had two guys enter the transfer portal, obviously, and that was Adam Kasai. He went back to where did he go back to?
Minnesota.
Minnesota, thank you. Minnesota, where he was originally committed to before he decommitted and committed to Clemson. Spent a couple months on campus, obviously went through spring practice for whatever reason, whether it be his exit meeting with Coach Rumpf or where he fell on the depth chart. He felt like the best opportunity for him was to leave Clemson and go back to Minnesota. So he went ahead and did that. We also had Zach Owens, Flapjack, as he was nicknamed, spent a little time in Clemson, came in injured, came in with his body a little overweight, not in playing shape, still not really in playing shape, still working towards that. Obviously, a new offensive line coach comes in. I think it's interesting that during spring, the two new coaches that were brought in after the season have the two players that are transferring, and that's nothing against the coaches we brought in. I think that just, when you commit to a coach and you think you're going to play for a coach, a lot of those guys, particularly further you get down the depth chart, they didn't come to play for Chris Rumpf. They didn't come to play for Matt Luke. So, they start looking for other opportunities. And a lot of that has to do with the exit meetings. A lot of that with Zach Owens had to do with injuries and his inability to just kind of get his body in a position where he could contribute on the field for Clemson. And he goes ahead. So he's going to be out there with Deion Sanders and Colorado. So that was kind of it for Clemson and the transfer portal. We didn't really make any big predictions coming out of spring about the transfer portal. We said that we thought we would lose some guys. But, overall, as a Clemson fan, if you're stepping back and you're looking at the guys you lost, not that you want to lose anybody, because anybody that you lose, regardless, is a depth piece. It's a guy that has been invested into by the coaches, by the support staff. It's a depth piece that you're losing. So you never want to lose really anybody. But I think Clemson made out as well as you possibly could, and probably as well as any university out there in college football when it comes to the spring transfer portal.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the low departures, I think it's a testament to the culture. I don't want to sound like I don't want to sound corny, but I do think it did play a role. Trust me, guys, Clemson was not, has not been immune to tampering and to, other programs reaching out to the players. It's been something they've been dealing with. And, some pretty high profile names were reached out to at different points this offseason. And, to retain them I think it speaks a lot. Obviously, I think Clemson did a good job, and they've done a good job as far as NIL with player retention, and I think that certainly helped. But at the end of the day, Clemson's NIL apparatus is not at the level at some of these other programs that are just throwing around bags,
right?
And they certainly could potentially were offered more than what they're getting here, but I think one of the things that has been reiterated to the roster, the players, from Dabo and the coaching staff is that, ultimately, are you going to chase the money now? We can take care of you here and also make sure that you're getting the holistic experience of being a collegiate athlete, right, and making sure you're prepared for the next level, or you can chase the money now, go somewhere where maybe the development is not quite at the same level. The track record isn't the same. You're not familiar with the coaches. You might not fit in culture-wise or as far as playing time is concerned. It might be a different situation. So you can go and do all of that and jump into unfamiliar waters, or you can stay where you've built those relationships and you've been within the program and where you stand, and the coaching staff is fully invested in making sure that your goals are accomplished. So, I think, that was one of the biggest things that helped Clemson kind of withstand this portal window, because they certainly there were certainly points where it could have been a lot worse. So I think it just speaks to what Clemson has built over the last 15 years with Dabo Swinney as head coach. It's always been about more than football and the NFL. I mean, obviously that's what the ultimate dream of a lot of these kids are, but not everybody's going to make it. And it's really important that you take advantage of all the other opportunities that Clemson has provided for these players, and take advantage of being a part of a culture, a team, that a coaching staff that is truly invested in making sure that you succeed. So, that's the long-winded way of saying, hey, props to Dabo, because I mean, there were points during this offseason where I was kind of worried about who might jump into the portal, because some of those could have been very, very big names, and guys that we definitely would not want to see go. So.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And I mean, we've talked about it on previous shows, but tampering is, a huge problem in college football right now. There are other staffs that are contacting players. Maybe it might be indirectly, somebody not officially associated with this staff or that staff, but that stuff is happening around the country all the time, especially during these portal windows. And, to your point, shout out to Clemson, shout out to Dabo Swinney, shout out to the rest of the staff. Shout out to the 110 Society, Clemson's NIL directive out there, because Clemson, as we've stated before, they don't have the NIL money like a lot of these other universities, right? They don't have the NIL money like an Ohio State, a Michigan, an Alabama, these bigger schools, a USC with these massive, alumni bases that they can pull all this money from. Clemson is a smaller university. They don't have near the pool of alumni to pull from. So, we've talked about it in the past, how they have to be very methodical. They have to be calculated with how they use every single NIL dollar, and they use it for roster retention. And I think it shows true, specifically in this last spring portal cycle. You don't see really any big hits to the Clemson roster. You lose, a couple depth pieces, a couple guys that were probably a little further down on the depth roster than they wanted to be, the depth chart. And you, as a Clemson fan, you couldn't hope for anything more other than how this spring portal cycle worked out for us. So I think it speaks to the health of the Clemson program. We are still a program that, can throw its weight around. We are still a program that can retain a lot of talent and can recruit a lot of talent. And I think that speaks volumes about not only Dabo, but the rest of the program. And you mentioned all the stuff that Clemson provides for these scholarship players, right? And these football players that are on the roster. It's not just about, the money that they're getting from the 110 Society. It's not just about, the development on the field, but you talk about Paul Journey, all the internships, all the big time businesses that these football players get exposed to when they're not on the football field, right? When they're doing their micro internships in the summertime and doing all this stuff that is going to carry them during life after football, because regardless of whether they make it to the NFL or not, there will be life after football.
Right.
So you have to prepare yourself. And I think Clemson does a really, really good job with that. So that's really good. Glad that we did not get beat up in the portal. I know Dabo takes a ton of heat for the portal, specifically because he does not pull anyone from the portal of significance. But we also do a really good job of not losing a ton to the portal, although we lose some. So
yeah,